Episode 3. Training Together. Because of its miracle, those who knew how to grow Helen plant sold it for no less than 3 golden Krugers, which was a lot during that time. Enough to feed a family of 5 for about 2 days at the least. Not everyone could come across gold Krugers. Only the best jobs could pay their employees with them, and it would take a huge amount of silver Krugers. However, if one could afford it, it was no problem, of course. Growing Helen plant was no easy task to do either, as it needed the right amount of care and took almost a full year. Once the guards had reached far from the kingdom, they dropped Callian like an old sack. If it was up to me, you would have never gotten that plant, Callian. Then spat in another direction, as if saying his name put a sour taste in the guard's mouth, then turned around heading for the kingdom without saying another word. Callian watched the guards as they walked away, sticking up a certain finger with his good hand while they had their backs turned. He then took a look at where his other arm used to be and shook his head. How am I going to be able to live with just one arm, when all my life I've had both? I wanted to die with both. Tears began to fill his eyes, right before rolling down his cheek and dropping into his trousers, leaving small wet spots, as the realization set in that he could never get that arm back. After a few minutes of crying, Callian grinned his teeth, then rose to his feet, glaring at the kingdom, the people still in view. A small breeze brushing across his face, right before he began to shout as loud as he could. Screw you all. One day I will return with great power, and I will have my revenge. And when I do, I'm going to get you, King Colin, and chop your arm off just like you did mine, then feed it to wolves right in front of you. As a matter of fact, both arms. Callian turned around, eyeing the dirt road ahead of him, a road that connected to other roads which people used to travel, often from one kingdom to another. Callian let out a sigh. The nearest kingdom is still 10 miles away. Maybe once I arrive, I can sneak in and find something to eat, and somewhere to lay my head for a while. With that thought in mind, Callian set off on his journey, heading toward the kingdom of Eldoria. I may need to find somewhere to rest on the way. 30 miles on foot will take some hours guaranteed. I'm wondering if I could steal someone's horse and get there faster. The only problem is, I've never ridden a horse on my own before. I've only ever sat behind the person I was riding with. That's not going to help much, I don't think. After another sigh, Callian said, "Oh well, if I find a horse, he's mine." Callian went off, heading in the direction of Eldoria, hoping to find a horse or so on the way. Omari was turning the knob, lowering the bucket of water down the well for the 5th time. It wasn't that he was still thirsty. He was struggling with his father's words. If my dad can get me out after just 1 year, it shouldn't be that bad, right? Pretty sure no one will attack us. Plus, I'll be able to make more than enough to help out financially while I figure out what I really want to do with my life. Maybe I can open my own shop. A smile slowly grew large as he thought about being a shop owner. Yeah, that'll be nice, my own shop. Then I'll be my own boss and won't have to worry about competing for a job, just in case someone who's been in the military longer than me comes along. What am I going to sell? Is the question. Once the bucket was back up to the top, tilting the bucket, it was wide enough that he could put his mouth up to the bridge of his nose in the bucket to drink the water from it without having to place his lips on it. While in mid-swallow, a pair of hands suddenly grabbed his shoulders from behind. "Give me that water," the voice that placed those hands said simultaneously. Omari's body jumped. He had gotten startled so badly that he began to choke on his water, hunched over as if trying to tie his shoe. While choking, he turned his head to see who it was. Standing before him, with dreads in her head, dark brown eyes, a dark skin complexion, slightly smaller lips than Omari, and a few inches shorter. She also wasn't that bad a looker either. If a complete stranger were to rate her, they'd probably give her a 7 out of 10. Of course, the ones who knew her would probably give the same rating as well. Even Omari, but he probably wouldn't tell her. Not because he was mean to her, it was more because he just wasn't looking to date her. She was his best friend and practically his sister, Zuri. She was just a year younger than Omari and lived only a couple of houses down. She was also on the slim side, yet not to a point where it appeared as if the right gust of wind would send her rolling down the street. She was killing herself, laughing at Omari, still trying to collect himself. "Girl, you almost killed me." He finally spoke with a few more coughs after getting some air back in his lungs. "I'm sorry, are you okay? I just thought it would be funny, that's all." The opportunity was so perfect I couldn't let it pass, said Zuri after getting her laughter under control. I hope it'll still be worth it when I'm dead, he said without even a crack of a smile on his face. Then you can explain to my family how you made me choke to death for a good laugh. Oh please, Omari, you're still alive, aren't you? Yes, this time, he responded, standing up straight. Zuri stepped past Omari and up to the well herself. Then she pushed the bucket back down the well. Hope you didn't drink all the water, thirsty butt. We all need some too, she said facetiously, noticing he had been standing at the well for a long time. Then she turned around in Omari's direction and leaned her lower back and body against the well. Yeah, right, it's impossible for me to drink all that water myself. But what I really want to know is, why were you watching me? Was I entertaining you somehow? Scaring you was entertaining, she quickly replied. And I wasn't just watching you. I noticed you while my mom and I were gardening. She turned around to face the well and began turning the knob to bring the bucket back up. Once at the top, she began to drink the water similarly to how Omari had before her little prank. After wiping her mouth, she looked at Omari and said, Before I forget, your dad asked my mom for more vegetables a few days ago. They weren't quite ready at the time. However, now we have some ready to give you all. They had just finished growing. Thanks. Knowing him, he will send me by later after we've finished our training session. Oh, you're training. That's why you've been at the fountain so long. It makes sense now. Plus, aren't you finally old enough to join the military? He's probably working the crap out of you, she said, with her eyes wide, then right after she took another drink. Forget a few drinks. You might need to take the whole bucket over there with you. She joked after wiping her mouth. That's very funny. But I've actually been over here thinking. My pop says he can get me out of the military in just 1 year if I decide I don't like it anymore, which I've already decided. Omari replied. He can't really do that, can he? Zuri asked, and Omari just shrugged. Well, if he can, then I don't see the harm in joining. I know you've been trying to get out of it for the longest, but a year really isn't that bad, you know. I'm not just saying that because it's a known fact that I've been wanting to join for the longest now, and more than anything in the world. I truly believe you should try it, or at least put in your biggest effort at the trials. Omari fell silent for a moment, as he began to ponder on Zuri's words. But before he could really think about it, Zuri continued to speak. I just wish I could train with you too. Maybe your father could teach me how to use my gift, although we are quite different in terms of our gifts. I've just always been too afraid to ask, however. I know what my gift is, but have no one to teach me how to use it since, I inherited my gift from my father. And he and my mother aren't together anymore. She has someone else now. A non-gifted, just my luck. So I'm a gifted child with 2 non-gifted parents. Zuri said with a sigh. I don't even know where my real dad is. Slowly putting her head down. Omari nodded sympathetically, then put a hand on her shoulder. Well, then I'll ask him myself if he can help you, since you've always wanted to train with us. Zuri's eyes suddenly lit up like magic at the suggestion. Really? That would be amazing, Omari. Giving him a tight hug. Squeezing him as if she were trying to bear hug him. Yeah, no problem, he said as if he was gasping for air. But you'll have to let me go first. Oh, sorry, she said with a small giggle, removing her arms from around him. I'll talk to him tonight and let you know what he says, Omari promised. Well, you are training now, aren't you? So, you want me to ask right now? Omari responded in slight confusion, not quite getting her hint. To that, she nodded her head and asked, Yeah, why not? Well, I guess I could ask him right now, Omari replied, glancing at Zuri. But weren't you doing something? I mean, you were gardening, right? With your mom. Zuri smiled with her hands together and fingers in between each other. Oh, she'll understand. Plus, we were almost done anyway. Let's just go for it. Omari chuckled. All right, let's do it then. I'll see what he says. Who knows, maybe we can both train together from now on. As they arrived back at Omari's home, they spotted Jabari in the backyard, throwing punches and kicks like he was battling a whole army of invisible soldiers, coming from multiple directions. His focus was intense, and the way he moved was almost mesmerizing, mostly to Zuri. Wow, look at him go, Zuri whispered, slowing her pace to take it all in. Omari had done the same. They watched as Jabari suddenly stopped, but he wasn't done yet. Facing the woods, he lifted the biggest stone in the bunch with his powers, making it float at the height of his stomach in front of him. Omari and Zuri exchanged impressed glances. Bending his knees, Jabari pulled his right fist back while keeping his left arm stretched out. Then, with a powerful punch with his right hand, he simultaneously pulled his left arm back. He sent the rock flying at lightning speed. It crashed into the trees, one after another, knocking them down as they made contact. The rock was able to knock down 6 trees before it finally completely lost its momentum. Wow, Mr. Mensah, that was amazing. Zuri couldn't help but run forward as she shouted with excitement. Oh, hey Zuri. Jabari welcomed her with a smile. I've never seen that much force in a punch. And you did it without even touching the rock. Putting her hands over her mouth as her eyes widened. I know you're telekinetic and all, but that was still impressive. Well, thanks, Jabari said, scratching the back of his head, elbow in the air, and a smile still on his face. It's actually something I've been working on for months now. Many, many months. Like years? Zuri asked, still amazed at what she witnessed. Well, not years, or even 1 year as a matter of fact. But close, he replied. Well, what was that? I've never seen you do that, or even work on that before, and we lived together. Omari joined in, looking just as excited as Zuri. Well, because before I could do it there was something else. I had to learn first. I call that move the sonic push. In combat, it's guaranteed to knock the wind out of any opponent in front of you, and it may even send them flying just like that rock, and could be helpful in the trails. Or better yet, it would be even more helpful with crowd control, if you ever happen to find yourself surrounded by multiple enemies. It's just a little something I figured out we can do with our powers, he said, as if he was trying not to brag. To do it, you need to focus all your energy cells in your arms. How much force you use in the punch depends on how many cells you gather. The number of cells you have in your body depends on your strength. Energy cells? Zuri asked, confused. Yeah, see, they're these cells that start at our core, but once we unlock them, they travel around our bodies alongside our blood cells and power us. However, if we start to bleed, these cells also leave our body and cause us to feel a lot weaker than normal people. Like you, for instance. A small frown appeared on the two faces, yet Jabari was too busy talking to notice. Energy cells can be controlled to a certain extent if you're good, but you'd have to be gifted to really understand, he finished explaining. With closed eyes and a large smile on his face, he stood there with both fists in his hips like a proud dad. Although, he wasn't her dad. But I am gifted, she responded, which surprised Jabari greatly. His eyes opened and smile left. Dropping his fists, he just looked at her, then placed a hand on his chin, with his elbow resting on his other arm that went across his stomach. Really? I never knew that. How come I've never seen you use your powers? What can you do? How come you don't know what energy cells are? Now Jabari was intrigued. Well, it's because I don't really know how to use my powers. My parents aren't gifted, so no one ever taught me how to, or about those energy cells you speak of. I really want to join the military, so I was hoping I could train with Omari, with you as my teacher, but I was always too afraid to ask. She explained, looking at him with innocence in her eyes. Oh yeah, to answer your final question, I can control the wind. Well, to a degree. I can't change the weather or anything. However, according to my mom, I can control the wind around me and make it come from my hands somehow, and even. She paused for a second, then looked towards Omari and simply blew. Both Jabari and Omari looked at each other with confused expressions, then back at Zuri. Even blow people or objects away with my own breath. But clearly I don't know what I'm doing. I thought I'd try it, since you said our energy cells start at our core. Well, that's because your cells are not powering up your blood cells. However, they are constantly moving about, looking for a way out, and have been since you were a baby. I will teach you how to unlock your cells and let you train alongside Omari, he exclaimed. I just can't believe you wouldn't ask me something like this sooner. After all, you are Omari's best friend, he said, back with that smile. But I do have more questions. Neither of your parents are gifted, but you are. That means you're not a second hand, are you? If so, then that means that you can potentially become stronger than even Omari. Yes, I'm second-hand gifted, she answered, and to which left Jabari confused. Yet, he did not have any words. My father isn't my biological father, she continued, noticing his confused facial expression. Jabari just nodded his head left to right a few times, showing he understood. So, that also explains how your mother is knowledgeable about your abilities. Though she is not gifted, Jabari continued. Exactly, from my real dad. She then took a short pause. Or father. Now that his questions had been answered, He began to think about how Omari would finally have a new sparring partner. For a while, he's been wanting Omari to face someone other than himself. He's been using sparring as a way to break Omari out of his pacifist ways. He's been trying to get Omari used to fighting, used to hurting people when need be. So he even instructed Omari to go all out and not to pull his attacks when sparring him. Omari's used to sparring with me. However, maybe a different opponent would get him out of his comfort zone and slowly build his confidence, or get him used to fighting more. He thought to himself, I mean, if you can throw a punch at a female, then you should be able to throw one at a male too, right? Other than me. With a huge smile on his face, he asked, So what are you doing now, Zuri? We're still in the middle of a training session. I wouldn't mind letting you jump in from here on out. Zuri looked at him with the biggest smile she had ever put on. Really? I'm not doing anything. I would love to jump in. Let's get started then. I can't wait to see what you can do, Zuri. Wow, that was a lot easier than I thought, Omari thought to himself. On the way over, he was trying to figure out the right words to use when asking his father to train Zuri. But to his surprise, he didn't have to say a word. Thinking about this, a small grin was placed on his face, as he too thought it would be difficult. How about we start with some sparring? Jabari immediately suggested, not wasting any time. Omari felt a mix of surprise and concern. His grin quickly faded away like cigarette smoke in the air. Sparring? With her? He exclaimed. Exactly, Jabari said, his tone firm. If you can get used to fighting a female, you should be able to fight anybody. Omari was slightly confused by his father's words, but chose to take a deep breath and exhale as he tried to process the idea. But, I don't want to hurt her. What if she gets hurt? Trust me, I highly doubt that you will, but that's where control and respect come in. Knowing how to control your powers and strengths is just as important as knowing how to use them, especially when it comes to techniques like the sonic push, which I can teach you. Yet I just realized, you never gave me your answer on my offer. All I'm asking is for one simple year. If you agree, I'll teach you the sonic push. Jabari then raised both his arms to his side, giving his final offer once more with an added bonus. Omari stood silent for a moment, looking at his father, then at Zuri with one hand on his chin and the other arm across his stomach. Zuri constantly nodded her head as she looked at him. You only have to do 1 year, and you get to learn a new technique. I would take that deal if I were you, Zuri said with a smile. With his palm open, Jabari pointed towards her in agreement. Exactly, it's a win-win for you. Even if you don't pass the trials the first go-around, you still learn something new. Okay, fine, Omari said reluctantly, letting out a deep breath. Honestly, he felt like saying no wouldn't suddenly change anything anyhow, especially with the 10 years his dad had already put into training him. It became apparent to Omari that Jabari only wanted him to agree so he wouldn't feel as if he was forcing him to do it, even though he still technically was. Still, he knew how his father was. Plus, why suddenly throw in deals? I'm glad to hear you say that, son. Although you didn't sound so enthusiastic about it, I'll take what I can get, Jabari said with a hint of pride in his voice. Now, since you said you'd agree, I can expect that you'll put the full effort in from here on out, right? No more slacking off or trying to do what you want, he said sternly. Now, how about we start that sparring match, huh? Jabari instructed the two to face each other, then stepped back some distance away before telling them to bow. The two did as instructed, with Zuri starting her bow a tad later than Omari. Get in your fighting stances. Omari got in his stance. Immediately after, he noticed something weird about Zuri's stance. Her hands were too close together, too close to her face, and her feet were too close together as well. She didn't even stand with one foot in front of the other as they were side by side. Omari took a quick look at his father, wondering if he would correct her, yet it was like Jabari had seen it but chose to disregard it. So Omari had chosen to do the same. Now start, he shouted. Zuri had always wanted to fight Omari. It was due to her competitive nature after observing a few of his and Jabari's sparring matches. As soon as the match began, she was the first to act, rushing in and throwing wild punches like windmills, one after another, which Omari easily avoided by stepping back and to the side. Unfortunately, he didn't expect Zuri to throw a kick, which she did straight into his leg. Ow wow, Omari said, stepping back, lifting his leg and rubbing it. It wasn't a skilled kick, no. The kick looked more like she was trying to kick a ball, yet it had done what she wanted it to. Come on, fight back, Zuri shouted at Omari, but he continued dodging her attacks instead, now making sure to watch out for those kicks. Jabari couldn't help but smile at her enthusiasm. He began to wonder why the two hadn't sparred together a long time ago. Zuri threw another kick, but Omari managed to lift his leg up in time and avoid it. Soon after, she launched another wild punch, yet Omari blocked it and moved to the side. Omari stayed in his fighting stance, holding his fists up to shield his face, yet not once did he go on the offensive. Zuri stayed in her fighting stance as well, as she inched closer to Omari, who continued to step back. Both of her fists were still up and still too close to her face, which Omari badly wanted to correct. After letting Zuri unleash her fury for a bit longer, Jabari decided to call the match, instructing them to bow one last time as he stepped forward. "Okay, now face me," he instructed, placing a hand on his chin and pushing his lips up with his index finger and thumb, trying to hide a grin. Zuri whipped the dripping sweat off her forehead. A bit of heavy breathing, but still full of energy. Omari wasn't tired at all. He just stood there waiting for his father to speak. "Omari, that was good defense. You managed to avoid every attack but one. However, I need to see more offense. You didn't throw a single punch the whole time." Omari frowned, but as for Jabari, he expected his son to stay on the defensive his first time sparring with Zuri. That's how he knew she wouldn't get hurt. Still, it didn't mean he wanted him to. "As for you, Zuri." The way he said those words made Zuri suddenly feel nervous inside. Her heart began to beat rapidly for more reasons than one. She was nervous to hear what Jabari thought of her fighting. Furthermore, it didn't help that Jabari was doing a good job of hiding his true feelings. Omari was also nervous, thinking his father might speak harshly about her strikes and, most of all, her horrible fighting stance and decide not to train her after all. He knew her fighting looked a bit childish, but he didn't blame her, knowing her situation. He wasn't sure if his father would see it the same way. Or maybe he could explain Zuri's situation to him, and he'd be more understanding. "I loved the amount of potential you showed. So enthusiastic, so eager to fight. Strangely, it reminds me of myself. I find it strange because Omari is my son, and even he is not like that." Omari's frown appeared once more, although he was relieved his father actually liked Zuri. She was also relieved and felt her heartbeat slowing down the more Jabari spoke well of her. But he took a short pause. Oh no, not the but she thought. Omari was thinking the same thing, except he actually said it out loud, so they both could hear him. "I can tell you have never had any training, as your strikes are a bit, sloppy." Jabari continued, bouncing his head from side to side and moving his palm in the same direction. He was trying to be polite with his words. "It's okay because I can help you improve on that." "Phew," Omari, feeling relieved once more. "So you're really willing to teach me?" Thank you, Zuri said, jumping around for joy before giving Jabari a tight hug. Okay, that's enough hugging," Jabari said, smiling again, sounding like she had suddenly taken the wind out his body. "I'm sorry, I'm just so excited," she said, removing her arms. "It definitely shows," Jabari said jokingly. "So can you tell me a little about what you've been teaching Omari? And will also be teaching me?" She smiled. "Okay, sure. What specifically do you want to know?" Jabari asked. "Well, the name of it for starters, and the kind of moves you will be teaching me as well," she said with excitement, putting her two fists back up. "I'm surprised Omari hasn't already told you what he'd been learning all this time." With his eyes on Omari as he spoke to Zuri. "She never asked me. Plus, it's not like I've ever been thrilled about it," Omari felt the need to say, shrugging his shoulders at the start of the sentence. "Well, that's fine. The name of what I'll be teaching you is Gidigbo, a traditional form of combat that I learned during my time in the military and also in Nguni stick fighting. I have been teaching Omari for the last 10 years. You will be learning different strikes, grapples, and physical maneuvers, making you a versatile and dynamic fighter. Not only that, but also a little of something else I've learned in the military as well." Zuri's smile grew. "Wow, I can't believe you're going to be teaching me." How did you say it?" Gidigbo Omari helped her out. "Yes, exactly," pointing at Omari. "I can't believe I'm going to be learning that. And those other things as well. You've learned a lot during your time, huh? What haven't you learned?" she asked, more than amused. "Honestly, I've always had a thing for martial arts. We were forced to learn it in the military, although we had many options to choose from. That's when I fell in love with it and tried learning everything I could. However, there are a few that I never got to finish because my time in the military was up. I could have stayed, but I needed to train Omari. That's all I'm going to say for now, since I know you didn't ask for a long story about my past. So, how'd you like to learn a few basic moves and give Omari a rematch instead? Zuri's face glowed once more with excitement. One could clearly see she was having one of the best days she had ever had. She had felt nothing but joy since arriving at Omari's. More than anything in the world right now. Dinner is ready now, a familiar voice called from the house. Ada, Omari's mother, raised the window to let Omari and Jabari know they could eat. Seeing Zuri with them, she didn't hesitate to invite her in as well. It was an invitation which Zuri gladly accepted, although the timing could have been better. Seeing how eager she was to learn new fighting moves, Jabari assured her not to worry because they would pick up where they left off the next day. As for now, they went inside to enjoy their meals.